Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
And welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism, folks. Lovely to have you back again. It's only been a few days since we last spoke, but as usual, things are happening, things are going on. And as we're now in the summer and the Parliament has recessed and Westminster just about to recess, this will possibly be our last Prism for a few weeks, unless, of course, anything exciting happens and we'll call the gang back together again from wherever they may be. But today, for our possibly last show of the summer, or for the summer, I am joined by Yvonne Ridley. Yvonne, my friend, welcome back again. Nice to see you. It's been all of a few days. We're joined by Denise Findlay up there in the city of Discovery. Hello, Denise. Welcome back, my friend. How are you?
Fine, thanks.
Excellent. And of course, from over there in Minamar, Phil Boswell, the old Coatbridge Cavalier himself. Welcome, my friends. How are you all? Everyone's fine. Well, we had a good chat the other day about the referendum that was coming in 2023, and if not, possibly maybe I could be a plebiscite. However, Denise, in a very short space of time, things are starting to unravel already, and it's kind of, we told you so. It's not looking good for the referendum in 23 for numerous reasons, but let's just start with the Supreme Court.
Yes. Well, I am working on an assumption there's going to be a referendum in 23 because I don't see there's any harm in doing that. It means that we campaign for independence. And so therefore I am going to campaign and act and that there is going to be a referendum next year. That's what we've been promised. And really it's up to Nicola Sturgeon to deliver it. She's come up with this plan, which may have been all along her secret plan. We will never know. But my guess is that the Supreme Court will take this on. It seems a little bit odd because what I don't understand is a few things. The first thing I don't really understand is if she doesn't present a bill to the Supreme Court and they rule on this hypothetical, which they may do, if they do, then when she does present the bill, I'm wondering, is that bill still open to legal challenge? Because her argument was that if we present the bill now, it will be challenged before it becomes law because there's a provision in the Scotland Act to allow challenges. Anybody can challenge. So it could just, Ruth Davison, for example, or some business person. So that was her argument for going to the Supreme Court to get a ruling. But if the ruling isn't on the bill, I'm not sure it precludes the bill, when it eventually goes through, would still, I think, be open to legal challenge. So she hasn't really, I don't think she's achieved her aim. But so that's one of my main points. One worries about the fact that even if the Supreme Court says yes, I'm not certain it would prevent a legal challenge once the bill is through Holyrood. So that's my first problem with it. My second problem with it is if the Supreme Court says no, then that's it. I mean, that's as far as Nicola Sturgeon's concerned, that seems to be it until, we get a general election, and that's a whole different ballgame than a referendum. And there's not been a real push for a Section 30. What this has done is, in effect, taken the pressure off Westminster, because now it's in the hands of the Supreme Court. They don't even have to talk about Section 30. All they have to say is, it's in the hands of the Supreme Court. So there's no pressure on Westminster to give a Section 30. And once the Supreme Court rules, what are we doing then? Are we trying to get a Section 30 when we get a negative ruling from the Supreme Court? What's the game plan? Because that's the part I don't understand either. And I also don't understand why we have just swapped, putting our sovereignty, which is the sovereignty of the people, we've taken it out of the hands of Boris Johnson and put it into the hands of the British Supreme Court. Why? So that would be my three three issues with her secret plan. I'm assuming this is her secret plan. And I also think setting this out and then going on holiday with so many unanswered questions seems to be not serious, no serious politician would do that. And, I just think that is a dereliction of duty, a complete dereliction of duty. She's not there to answer the questions. So that would be my take on the Supreme Court.
And very valid points, Denise, very valid points.
Yeah, so just to finish, I'm not a lawyer, and this is just a lay person. I'm definitely taking on good faith, and all this summer we will be campaigning for independence with our Alba book, road shows, and doing everything we can to advance the case, because that's the only thing to do at this point, is to campaign for independence.
Yeah. Well, Phil, one of the things is what they're saying, and the unionists have picked up on it. Two things. I said to Nicola when she made her first speech, why did you use the word legal referendum? You've given them something to talk about. But the other one that they've picked up on, the unionists, and it was in the Telegraph article, is the fact that the Scottish Government opposed Martin Keating's when he took this very same question to the Court of Session. And Nicola's own Lord Advocate, Lord Wolfe at the time, argued on behalf of the Scottish Government that you couldn't question, that the court couldn't make a decision on this because there wasn't an actual bill. And so the understanding, and again, I'm putting the same caveat in as Denise, I'm not a lawyer. However, this bill cannot go to completion without being agreed with the Section 30. So therefore, surely the likelihood is the Supreme Court are going to give the same reply as the Court of Session and say, well, this is hypothetical, so we cannot make a ruling. And we actually don't get any further forward. Why she didn't put the whole bill through and then wait for them to challenge it seems strange.
There's a couple of, this is a complex issue again, and as Denise has already pointed out, we are none of us lawyers. We know a few. The bold Eva could be on here giving us a blow for blow account of it, but there are some fundamental principles here that Denise touched on. Obviously, the mainstream media are making hay on the fact that theoretically the Scottish Government's own legal team has already undermined theoretically this push towards a referendum because of the Keatings v Advocate General case. And what people need to remember about this was an action raised by Keating. It was dismissed in the Court of Session to have the court rule that the Scottish Parliament had power to pass legislation for Indie Ref without consent of the UK government. And something Denise mentioned earlier, Section 33, was one of the reasons they cited. But core to all is remember what a real strategist would do under these circumstances, because Alex Salmond said the only rational reason to intervene in the Keating case was to avoid the case being tested and lost. Now, so theoretically, therefore, the best outcome was a technical knockout. You're not setting any precedent that could damage our prospects moving forward. Now, it's kind of effectively what happened is the judge dismissed the case, stating that it was hypothetical, premature, and constitutionally wrong. Yep, you're back, Yvonne. Good. Now, it's academic, they said, because as Denise has pointed out, the declaration sought would have no practical effect because they don't know what the precise terms are unless it's presented or legislation already. They've got nothing to make a decision about. And now we have an SNP legal team who are being cast up who said last year that Keating case needed to go through Holyrood first. They told this to the Court of Session, as reported in the mainstream media then, as reported now by the mainstream media. So, this is what we talked about when we last spoke. This is not the cleanest way to proceed. It's not a cunning plan. You need to be carefully create your strategy, and it's a long-term strategy, or it should be. This has got a half-assed, half-baked look about this plan. I hope not, and I hope it works, and we will work, as Denise said, but what kind of strategy is it to oppose Martin Keating trying to make the UK government... why are we working for the unionists in the UK government? So this is going to be used against us, because Again, whose plan is it? We need to know whose plan is this that Nicola's putting in place, because the big concern we all have, it's been articulated many times, we don't believe that our best minds are behind it. We know the SSRG and Salvo, some of the real experts on this, constitutional experts on this, have not been consulted. And that, on such a critical issue, it smacks of egotism and arrogance, when really we ought to be considering all options and listening to all the experts' advice before making an informed decision. That doesn't seem to be the case here.
I would agree, Yvonne. The cynic in me keeps coming out. Now, politicians of all hues never like to admit they're wrong, never, on anything. And I'm of the opinion that maybe Nicola, and I'm putting up a slight defence for her here, is that she knew that Section 30 was never going to go. Lots of people, lots of bloggers, myself, Grousey, Stuart Campbell, Ian Lawson, Ian Cameron, all of us had said, plebiscite, forget the Section 30, it's not going to fly. So instead of turning around and going, mea culpa, I made a mistake, we're going for a plebiscite, she's thrown this out there to get someone else to squash it so she can say, wasn't my fault. Now, I know I'm a cynic, but I think that's got some merit.
Well, I think there's a lot of merit in what you say. When you consider that this announcement was going to be made, I expected her to come on with full swagger. And let's face it, when she wants to swagger, she knows how to do it. But instead, she came on and sort of almost apologetically slipped this little piece of paper out and left it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court might actually turn around and say, we're not touching this. You haven't got a Section 30 in place. You haven't got anything in place. Go away and come back again when you have something concrete. She's basically asking them to decide on something that isn't there. So they could actually just turn around and say, no, we're not in a position to make a decision. So it's all very woolly. There's lots of ifs and buts and maybes. And I think Denise has the right sort of attitude. Let's just campaign full on as though it is real, it is happening. Because I think at the end of the day, this will very much be a people's movement, and the SNP and the Scottish government might get left behind by the will of the people. And so we've just got to come out of the starting blocks as though the race is on, and we've got to aim towards that date. And as for Nicola Sturgeon and her wishy-washy announcement, it speaks volumes about the state of where the SNP is. Usually you get a good indication on the social networks of what's going on. And the SNP members have been very muted about the whole thing. And I thought that they would have been out there ready to defend and say, of course she means it. No, she hasn't given Scottish sovereignty away to the Supreme Court in England. But the social networks, as I say, have been very muted. The good news is that lots of independence movements are up and running now. And are talking and thinking, right, we've got to start and campaign for independence, which, let's face it, is the first time this has happened since 2014. So it's no bad thing. And I have a feeling that the people will lead on this, and the SNP is going to end up playing catch up.
I hope you're right. Let's stay with the referendum for a minute, Denise, for me. And let's just say, for argument's sake, devil's advocate time, the Supreme Court says, you can do it, go for it. Now, as you've pointed out, the Parliament's closed. They're going on holiday. We're back September, then we're into conference time in October. There's really not much time, even if she gets a yes from the Supreme Court, which we all think is unlikely. But if she does, to get a referendum in 2023 really is, there isn't the time, is there?
Well, she would have to have the bill through Parliament, I think, at the end of March, the 19th of March, because the Electoral Commission requires a minimum of 6 months. And then also there's the question of the question, because interestingly, and another thing I would like to question her on, is that she said it's the same question as 2014, and that's what she's put to the Supreme Court. However, when the referendums bill was going through Parliament, earlier, their generic referendums bill, there was discussion of this, and the SNP conceded that the question would be tested. And I think in January 2020, they actually went to the Electoral Commission and asked the question to be tested, and then they paused for COVID. And the question testing takes 3 months. But if the question is tested and the Electoral Commission says it's a different question, then what happens to that Supreme Court judgment? So that's another question I have on the detail of this plan. However, your question was, Roddy, I forgot your question.
My question was, is there enough time?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Even with a yes.
So she needs to get the question tested, which would take 3 months. And of course, I think the Electoral Commission and the bill can't go through Parliament until the question is tested. So I would be asking her if she has put forward the question to the Electoral Commission to be tested. And it would seem to me sensible to test the question before going to the Supreme Court, so you know the question that you're going to actually ask. So that would be one of my questions for Nicola Sturgeon. So in a short, I'm not seeing a serious attempt here. The fact that they've got nothing planned all summer, if they're having a referendum in October 23, then I would expect a series of events all summer, such as Alba are having, because we're having
you're a good girl.
Now. So we're having a We Alba Roadshow in St Andrews with Alex Salmond in the Parliament Hall. We're having one in Glasgow with Alex Salmond. We're having one in Melrose, the Melrose Corn Exchange, and then one in Perth at the George Hotel. All with Alex Salmond.
And the SSRG are busy. Salvo are busy. Yeah, the only people who are not busy.
Yeah. And what I'm saying is the fact that on the announcement of the referendum, we have these events lined up and many more events over the summer. And SNP have nothing. So how serious are they about an independence campaign? They haven't got anything lined up. So that's another concern I have. But the main thing is for Alba is we will be campaigning, and Alex Salmond will be campaigning for independence. That is his life's work. And he's never going to stop campaigning for independence, as he said. So we'll be able to inspire, I hope, and encourage the independence movement. And as Yvonne said, we can make an unstoppable force. And that's what we have to do. So by the time Nicola and the rest of the SNP get back from their holidays, hopefully we will have a good independence campaign up and running.
Yep. Well, it is kind of started already. And as Yvonne alluded to, Phil, things are moving and Yvonne's gone further. There's Alba's going full tilt, SSRG, Salvo, and so are the unionists. Well, they never really kind of stopped. But I was very surprised to hear that Murdo Fraser had joined the Yes movement and was promoting independence. And with Techie here, was going to now show you where he had his Road to Damascus moment, our Murdo Fraser, and he is now campaigning full tilt for the independence movement. Give us that up there, Techie.
Now, look, Murdo, forgive me. I'm starting to wonder whether or not the rest of the UK should vote to leave Scotland.
I think if you look at the performance of certain SNP politicians like Ian Blackford in the House of Commons, they seem to be designed to rile up people across the rest of the UK to such an extent that they say, take these people away from us. We've had enough of seeing them in Westminster. But I think in a more hard headed analysis, people will see if Scotland leaves the UK, we lose roughly a third of the landmass of Great Britain, probably around half of our territorial waters. We lose the magnificent resource that is Scottish fishing waters. We lose the opportunities from North Sea oil and gas, still there despite Nicola Sturgeon's best efforts. We lose the potential for renewable energy from Scotland's coasts and in the North Sea and the Atlantic. We lose access to barrier-free trade for Scotch whisky and Scotch salmon, all these fantastic exports, the opportunity to study at some of the world's greatest universities in Scotland, and the joy of having Scots as part of the British nation. Why would you want to throw that away?
You've got to say, that comes as a surprise to you, Phil, that Murdo had switched sides. He's now, I believe, got a season ticket for Parkhead as well. The guy's just gone completely flipped over. He's going to watch Celtic next year and he's joined the Yes movement. It was a great advert for independence. How thick is he?
Yeah, well, it's clear why Murdo has never won an election. Murdo, I mean, he's full of it, because I debated him in Strathclyde University when there was I think it was the energy minister couldn't turn up, and I stepped in, being an oil and gas guy and renewable energy, and I've done a lot of work on this kind of thing, and it was just glib sound bites from all the politicians, the usual kind of nonsense. And when he comes in, he starts listing, it's the tip of the iceberg. 1/3 of the land mass, the half of the territorial waters, all the fish, 65% the fish landings, 60-something%. It's fantastic. And then the renewable energy and the potential of the around Scotland's coast, and people perhaps don't realise the English coast, including islands, is 6,200 miles or something. Scotland, including its islands, is nearly twice as big, with 11,500 miles. It's night and day. And then he goes on to say some of the world's top universities, we won't be able to get in. Well, actually, you will. Just pay more, England. Right now, you get a wee discount, but we like money, and foreign students are welcome in Scotland, so you just pay more for your English people. And then he goes on to talk about the loses the barrier to free trade, Scotland whisky. What was Brexit all about? You fool! You fool! It's hilarious. But and then the bottom line is we'll just be part of the European Union with 500,000 people accessing us when we do join after the EU, however it pans out. And then he goes on to talk
500 million. You're a wee bit short there.
500 million. Yes, right. But it's he says we. The key here is we. We will lose. What he's saying is Britain will lose. England will lose. He is the classic house jock. Stephen out of Django. Watch it. Unchained, one of Samuel L. Jackson's most challenging roles, where he was the house slave and he was fighting the slaves and doing the master's bidding. This is classic house jock. He should be embarrassed. But you're right, Roddy. He's just not smart enough.
It's great. But he's not alone, Yvonne. The unions, one of my favourite pastimes, as you all know, is putting out that name 3 things that can only be achieved by the British Union that cannot be achieved by an independent Scotland. And I have some hysterical replies because they don't have much argument. And there was another clip, and I'm hoping Techie's there and getting ready to put this up. I don't watch Question Time anymore, but I've seen some of these clips, and there's a unionist in the audience who doesn't want a referendum, and then he tells us why he doesn't want a referendum. They're not the brightest. They might have posh voices, but they're not the brightest. Can you cue that one up for us, Techie?
You asked the question, should there be a referendum in 2023?
Well, the question is, will there be?
Will there be? In my opinion, there probably will be. I hope there's not. I'll tell you why there shouldn't be one, though. One, no means no. We've already debated that already. But secondly, I think we all agree that we want the best thing for Scotland in this room. Okay? Do we really want a society which is split down the middle? Because currently we're talking about roughly 50-50. Now the SNP gentleman will say it's 52, it's 48, it's 48, 52, depending on what it's going to be. We're talking about fine margins here. Now I have to admit, if the vote for independence was 74 independents and 30 against, I would go with the majority. I don't think that's a good thing for Scotland, because it's going to divide Scotland right down the middle, and it's never going to get better until we have that conclusive debate there.
So, till we have that conclusive debate, Yvonne, But we're not. I don't want you to have a debate because you might not come out with the answer I like. We're split. We're already split, but it's different if we're split. As long as we're in the union, it's okay for the country to be split. But don't have the debate because you might come up with the wrong answer. So let's just leave it as it is. Let's all go home. It's farcical.
These are the sort of unionists, they're the gift that keeps on giving. I'm surprised that Question Time hasn't started questioning its audience more closely before it allows them near a microphone. These clips will come out and be used for our campaign. But, you were talking about splits. We're told that the SNP leadership is not united in this case of a referendum. I think we need to know who they are, how many there are in the most senior ranks of the SNP, because it is interesting to, when Sturgeon made her announcement, when somebody goes to war, they usually have all their generals lined up so we can see them all and the strength and the power behind them and the unity. But we didn't see that. As I say, we saw an uncharacteristically timid First Minister, minus the swagger. And where were her generals? Who are the senior members in the SNP who are actually not supporting this referendum?
Well, I don't think we'll ever get the answer to that question. But the other one is, while these people, the gift that keeps giving, as Yvonne says, Denise, last week we had a hero for us all, especially as lefties, of Mick Lynch, and we all got really good. But a new hero was born in that very same Question Time. He's now, some people call him Captain Birdseye, but I prefer the Captain Scotland. And this is the difference. Our people are able to articulate. And Captain Scotland, a farmer himself, articulated perfectly and really gave them the what for. Keke, can you give us Captain Scotland?
Yeah, I've heard at least 3 different versions of people saying that the people don't want a referendum. And I would suggest politely that the people that are saying that should look at the most recent election, where 49% of the electorate wanted a referendum. Look at the last general election, where the Labour Party had their worst result since 1910 and 1 MP represents Scotland. So they're either not listening to the people because people aren't voting for you. Tories aren't listening to the people because people aren't voting for you either. Right? You haven't been in power in Scotland since 1955. Right? Maybe if you all listen to the people, then you would understand what we're saying. You guys are custodians of our country. You work for us.
Yeah, could I?
Right?
Okay, hang on. Let me just come back to Angus.
When he finished his wee bit there, Denise, I thought he was going to say, you've not been in power since 1955. All he was, get it up you. I was expecting, because that's all it required. The man was brilliant, and he hit it on the nail.
Yeah, well, not quite, Roddy. Because actually, in the Scottish Parliament election list vote, 50.5% actually voted for parties in favour of independence, not 49%. Actually, we had a majority.
Yeah, well, there's a nice dampener. Okay, so over 50% voted yes.
Yeah,
but the point is, he was right. The Labour and Tories don't listen. They don't care. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. However, I don't think we should get too comfortable criticising Labour and Tories on not having answers, because the SNP don't have answers either. They don't have answers to the questions from 2014. The currency, they don't have an answer. They don't have an answer on the EU. In 2014, we were told we wouldn't get into the EU. How are they going to answer this question of accession to the EU now? They can take minimum of 5 years, and also borders. So that whole EU question, they don't have answers to either. So it's not like the SNP, and they haven't developed the case at all. It's a different world now than it was in 2014, not just the Brexit issues, but the issues, globalization, the war in our relationship with America and Trident, etc., that kind of defense relationship, given what's happening in Ukraine, in the war in Europe, the emphasis on renewables, which we have a massive potential for. None of that case has been updated. And the only thing they fall back on is their outdated neoliberal growth commission for the economy. And that was done in 2018. So they don't have the answer. So I don't think we should get too, proud of ourselves, looking down on the unionists, not having updated their perspectives, because the SNP haven't updated their perspective. Luckily, ALBA has, because ALBA have answered all these questions in our Re-ALBA book, available online at thealbaparty.org. So if you want the answers to the questions, you know where to go, and it's not to the SNP.
Well, as we said earlier, Denise, it's not the SNP who are going to be campaigning over the summer. It will be the Yes Movement, and the Yes Movement do have the answers.
Yes, and also, sorry, I forgot to mention the Salvo conference. They have a lot of answers on the Constitution and SRG coming up. So there's two tacks to it. There's the popular Yes campaign with the answers to all these bread and butter kind of questions and the enthusiasm. And then there's the constitutional people looking at Scotland's Constitution. So the grassroots is there. They need to just mobilise them, get them going. So when the SNP get back from their holidays, they've got this unstoppable force for independence. That's what they will meet. Let's hope they're not the immovable object, as they've been for the last 7 years.
Wait, I have to put that. I've got barking dogs in the background here. Sorry if you hear them. They're going mental. One dog starts, they all join in. And quite annoying, but what can you do? I think they wait on purpose for me to start doing this recording. Denise is right, and the world has changed, Phil. And one of the things that, as an old anti-war person myself, we've talked on the show often about it, but really what got me this week was that the Scottish government, I should say the caveat, for 60 years the Yes Movement has opposed all wars, demanding immediate ceasefires and negotiated settlements. That has been our position. It's certainly the position of ALBA as well to this day. However, the SNP have suddenly become gung-ho, pro-NATO, full of Russophobia, and we're now, Scotland is sending military aid to the Ukraine. Not in my name. I am ashamed and angry, especially when there is so much we could be doing at home. And again, it was what Kate Forbes has alluded to is that the Treasury demanded that both Scotland and Wales contribute. This was a chance for Kate Forbes, the SNP, and Nicola Sturgeon to say, no, not in our name. We're not going to help kill people, innocent civilians of the Ukraine, to satisfy, NATO policy. It was just a shameful moment for Scotland.
It is. It's an absolute disgrace and a betrayal of our cultural core principle, which has always been peace and to talk. And it really, this insipid, if you're supposed to be campaigning for the freedom and the independence of your country, and you don't have the backbone to stand up and say, sorry, we're not giving you money to kill people. Sorry, get out. That's just not good enough. I mean, this what's happening in Ukraine just now, I mean, we're contributing to the death of people for neoliberal reasons, which is complete opposite of who we are. I mean, Russia is winning as it always going to. NATO is being shown up for the bully that it is, and we're supporting the European Union, which is the new lapdog, the new poodle that Britain was. The Dutch and the Mexicans, political leaders are calling for war it is, a proxy war, an American proxy war with Russia. And we're contributing to this. We're killing people. The EU has lost control of Eastern Europe. It can't even get Lithuania to toe the line. It's trying to cut off Russian support and supplies of food to the Kaliningrad Oblast, which is separated from the rest of Russia by primarily Lithuania. And Poland is advocating more violence and aggression and against Russia. And in support of this illusion, which is the state of Ukraine, because it's falling apart, Ukraine. If people are paying attention and looking at alternative information, we're contributing not only to the unnecessarily deaths of people, but Ukraine's going to get carved up here. Poland actually probably just wants to retake Western Ukraine, as it did under Casimir the Great in the 14th century. They've always had a claim to large parts of the Western Ukraine. It's a relatively new state handed to a people who were pro-Russian by the Russians, with many Russians involved in it. Then there's the complete economic failure. We'll continue to chuck good money, our money, when our people are starving, our people are struggling and are going to be in real trouble and get any more trouble over the coming months, especially as winter approaches with energy prices and crisis. And we're giving money to kill people for weapons that's probably going to be stolen as well. And so we're partaking in a strategy that is so naive and so stupid that we're following Americans' recommendations that the Russians have barely beat everything that the West has thrown at them by simply selling gas for rubles. That's all they've done, from an economic perspective. So no, I can't understand why why we're doing this, why we're kowtowing to the establishment when it's the very establishment we're supposed to be trying to wrestle ourselves free from. And you need muscle, you need backbone, and I see nothing in that. And that's a clear indicator that they're just kowtowing and doing what they're told, and that we should be very fearful of, sadly.
Yvonne, we've often discussed on here as a group, and I'm thinking about drug centres and other things that we, closing the border during COVID, that we should be pushing back at every opportunity to exert our independence, our difference. And it seems that this government keeps, falling into line as good little British people. Or am I being unfair?
No, you're not. My late great friend Tony Benn used to point out, Riley, isn't it amazing that governments can suddenly find millions or billions in today's terms to fund wars and yet can't do anything about improved education, health and such like. At the moment, I'm reading a book by Darren McGarvey on Scotland's drug problem, and it really is something that the Scottish government appears to be trying to sweep under the carpet. He should be made Scotland's official drug czar and be let loose with some money to tackle this huge problem, which is more class related than anything else. And we're drifting away from the war in Ukraine, but you can join all the dots together. This is another American forever war. Something had to replace the futile 20-year war in Afghanistan, and Ukraine is it. I'm really disgusted at the shoddy level of journalism that's coming out from colleagues covering the war, as though it's, just one-sided. It isn't. The Russians have already taken 20% of strategic land that they're after. I'm not supporting the Russians in any way, any sort of aggression. But we should be trying to encourage diplomacy instead of ratcheting up the rhetoric, which is clearly, becoming an East-West situation. I mean, we had one of Boris Johnson's ministers talking about an iron curtain descending, and it's like, where is it all going to lead? And so to drag Scotland in, this was a great occasion where again the First Minister could have put on some swagger and just said no. This is against all of Scotland's principles. This is why we're different to the rest of the UK, and really made a mark. But instead, she put on her tin helmet and went running with flak jackets to stand with NATO.
It goes back to Yvonne. Sorry, Denise. It goes back to what I've said. She does love a bandwagon, and it seems there's some much wittier than myself wrote. No, I'll never stand beside Nicola Sturgeon in case I get hit with a bandwagon, and this is just typical of it. I mean, it was when she came in at first, it was I'm going to have a gender balanced cabinet, and then it was Me Too, and we know where the hell that went. And then this trans thing, that I'll get into that. People's referendum. Yeah, I'm in for that. Get me a camera. When they were talking, get rid of Boris. Yeah, he should resign. It's not good for our parliament. What? Our parliament? All this stuff, and then this one's come along, and as Yvonne said, we should be. I mean, in real terms, 65 million doesn't buy a lot of weapons. I understand that. It's the principle here, Denise. That money, again, it wouldn't have been much of a dent, but it could have paid a few pensioners' gas and electricity bills. It could have covered a few food banks. But it was the most important thing, as Yvonne's pointed out, is it was a chance for us again to push back and go, we're different. We're not with you.
And I would hope that when Scotland's independent and we have a constitution, our constitution will address these kind of matters, that we should not be funding anything that can kill people. We shouldn't be funding war. We should fund peace. And I would have expected, if we were independent, that what we would be pushing for is diplomatic solutions and peace as soon as possible. That doesn't seem to be on anybody's radar. There's a phrase from a song I love, and it says, "While the killers in high places say their prayers out loud." And that sums up this. It's virtue signalling and pretending to be good when they're actually being evil. So I have no time for it. The one thing I was just going to correct myself, I thought it would be as well correcting myself here, is actually the bill has to be through by January because they have to allow time for the campaign. So if they don't put a referendum bill through by January, through all stages, we won't be having one on the 19th of October. By January.
Just to quickly cover that off. So that only really gives them about, I think quickly, about 45 days of parliamentary time, something like that.
Yeah, and it's actually disingenuous because when the referendum bill, the generic one, went through Parliament, there was a lot of talk in committee about the Electoral Commission needing enough time and other bodies needing enough time during the committee stage to scrutinise the bill. So I don't know if they can actually shortcut this committee stage in order to get this bill through. That referendum bill they brought in was complete smoke and mirrors. They brought it in pretending it would make things easier, but actually during the passage of the bill, anything useful was removed. And it doesn't really help them at all when they bring in the referendum bill, not at all. So, so I think it's, unless they're going to they should have had it done. They've had it over a
But there's
year.
another thing that you haven't covered, Denise, with the Electoral Commission, is that they've also got to set up things like, for example, who are supporters and who are going to be.
6 months.
And that takes months as well, to say, is Wings Over Scotland, Barred Boy, are they officially helping the campaign? So that takes months as well.
That's why they say they need 6 months for a referendum.
It's
they
not
don't
just
need
a
it
question.
for the general election. They need the 6 months to register the participants. That's what it's for. And that is a minimum of 6 months, they say. Because you think about, you'll have to designate who the lead body is, in each side. So that's why they say minimum of 6 months, but then you have to put the campaign period on as well, which needs to be 6 weeks. I'm working on minimums here. That means the bill has to go through from January.
And so then you get Christmas recess.
Yes, they need to have that bill in Holyrood.
And you've got the what do you call it, conference season, blah de blah de blah, midterm. So We're going to have, if we're having them, we're having a plebiscite, folks, okay?
Just to finish this, they all know this. They are politicians. They know how long it takes. They know about testing the question. They know how long the Electoral Commission needs. They know how long the committees take. They know what was said. They know this. So why are they telling us what seems to be lies?
Well,
why? They know this.
It goes back to what I said to Yvonne. I think she's doing it rather than turn around and say the game's a bogey in the Section 30, we're going hell for leather on a plebiscite. That would be admitting failure. And politicians, not just Nicola, no politician ever. I mean, they never like to admit they've got it wrong. They've always got it right. So instead, I think she's just done this knowing what's going to happen. But more than ever, not just the financial side, not the wars and all the things that are going wrong, Phil, but the corruption and sleaze that continues to ooze out of Westminster. Today, whatever day it is, there's more sleaze. You're definitely going to hear about it. But the latest one was this MP, Chris Pincher, who, and now the Tories we know are full of sleaze. They're slow to react. They don't, turn in, quickly. However, this guy, there's a lot of parallels here. See if you can see where I'm going. He molested two men at a party.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yes, he allegedly touched her. He did write a letter to Boris saying that, he was a bit drunk, and and he thought it best to stop as a deputy chief whip, and maybe because he was deputy chief whip, but maybe he's got a bit of dirt. But the Tories suspended him immediately, almost. He's now been suspended. The whip's been withdrawn, and it will not be returned until after, at earliest, the inquiry is over. But also, numerous Tory MPs have come out, Tories have come out and said he needs to resign and we need a by-election. Now, I refer you to one Patrick Grady, who 6 years ago, word came out. He ended up getting a 2-day suspension 6 days later, and he's back in the fold as soon as the police inquiry is over, which, let's face it, it will be. But the same lot that are investigating the Daily Record leak or the 600k. So I'm sure Patrick can sleep easy tonight.
Yeah, and I know Patrick. I was there in 2016, obviously, and I know Patrick reasonably well. But you can see the contrast, the absolute contrast. And I think what is most striking is how Nicola and this core cabal at this current centre of SNP, how they treat those on the inside of that little tent versus how those on the outside are treated. The way Michelle Thompson was treated, the way Natalie McGarry was treated, the throwing people under the bus. I was up next quite quickly as well. So, but it was. It's so striking to see. If you're one of the in crowd and one of the very small tight cabal, you're looked after. If not, it's all about preventing Nicola from being embarrassed. Now, the focus as well, when Ian was exposed, talking about protecting Patrick and getting behind him rather than standing up for the victim and all of this, who had something to say about it. That's very unsavoury. The whole episode was unsavoury, to say the least. And really, you have a duty of care and this is any professional in any organisation, to your staff and your people, to protect them from this type of thing and to act properly and to be seen to act properly. And if you're getting moral lessons from Tories, something's gone very, very wrong here. That is a massive. It echoes, sadly, all of the points we're making now, that all our fears have not been assuaged. I'm still really, really concerned that this could yet be a stitch-up, and there's a duty. We, as independent supporters and voters, have and passionate individuals who care about our country and our people, we have a duty of care to say what we see. If you self-police yourself, it's far more healthy. Speak up and identify the bad eggs within your own organisation, the wrongdoing, the truth speakers that we used to applaud and we ought we really need to applaud and support, like Assange, like anyone who's blowing the whistle, anyone who's speaking the truth without fear or favour. People that have done it before with great courage, like Craig Murray. Our system and our establishment, the establishment that the Western society that we have built and we're part of, is eating itself just now. It's putting down those criticisms and the individuals who critique the worst elements of it, and we're not perfect, and I always support the Western philosophy, but it can get too tyrannical as it is now, and that is destabilizing the whole ethos, the whole principle, and all that's good about what we do. And let's not take away from the fact that we do good. There is a good society in many aspects, but we're seeing the worst elements of it, and it's up to us to fight and stand up and speak out for what is right and what's best about our peoples, our cultures and our values. And those that we have elected today that represent us now are clearly being undermined. They've sold us, they've betrayed us, they have betrayed our principles, our core values, and that's not good enough. They must pay a price, and it's up to us to make sure they do.
On that theme, Yvonne, and I don't want to give you nightmares, and I really feel sorry for this vision I'm about to give you, but while Foreign Secretary, our Boris Johnson, was apparently caught in his office having what they call a sex act with his then mistress, who he was recommending for $100,000 job. And going back to your talk about your fellow journalists, this quickly disappeared off the radar. A Prime Minister now, a Foreign Secretary, one of the high states of office, we know what was happening. Boris Johnson, the initials help, in his office. Standards can't get lower, can they?
Well, yes, you've just put a terrible image in my head. I'm a tabloid journalist, let's call it what it is, whether Techie wants to bleep me out or not. It was a blow job, and this was already in the public domain. It was already in the in a political memoir about Carrie Johnson's life, about the First Lady, so-called First Lady. It is.
She ain't no lady.
Sorry?
She ain't no lady.
No lady at all, no. But anyway, oh gosh, I'm getting images now of Hugh Grant and a joke.
Can't do that one either.
No, absolutely not. But seriously, the media again in Westminster has been shown to be gutless and spineless. Thankfully, it's backfired on them. Those who didn't buy the political book now know exactly what went on in Boris Johnson's office. And again, the sleaze coming out of Westminster is unprecedented. We're in a state now where we've got Neil Parish, the former Tory MP for Tiverton and Honiton, going mad because the whip wasn't withdrawn straight away from Chris Pincher. Of course, Neil Parish is the guy who was looking at porn while he was sitting in the House of Commons debating chamber. And he's outraged at the reaction or the treatment of Chris Pincher. If MPs are compromised in this way, there's only one way to go, and that's to do the honourable thing, and that is to step down until they have been exonerated or otherwise. And of course, Chris Pincher is a man who should step down. Who should, I'd never thought I'd say that I feel sorry for Tories, but I do feel sorry for his Tory constituents because, the MP that they voted for is neither use nor ornament at the moment. He's not doing the job that they voted him in for. And it goes to the heart of democracy. He should resign, create a by-election and
Let the people choose.
But also something needs to be done about this Westminster culture. You know, it now must be, per head of population, one of the most treacherous, dangerous places in Britain to work.
Yeah. I've got time is coming against us. I've got two questions. The last one I'm saving for you, Denise.
I was going to just comment on the
please do.
Boris thing. It actually shows his character is power and risk taking. And if you think about it, obviously power, because there's no, and the act, and risk taking because he did it in an unlocked office, and it's kind of like his power, his personality. Not a good personality, I would say, to have as a prime minister.
No, we could write a tomb in that of what he's not fit because of. And I'm going to come back to you in a minute, Denise, on a question. There's a couple of things I want to do. During the campaign, in the recent campaign, Anas Sarwar was quite belligerent. He was having no deals with anyone, not with the Tories, not with anybody. And certainly not when Nicola was trying to smooch him and it didn't work. And as soon as, of course, the election was over, Phil, they started doing deals throughout Scotland on councils, so to lock out the SNP. And still Nicola wants to do deals with Anas Sarwar and the Labour Party. But this week, now this is, and I'm my age, I'm thinking back to Tony Benn, for example, or Dennis Skinner, or Naib Evan Renless. 2 Labour councillors in Scotland were suspended by Sarwar this week for not, I repeat, for not agreeing to a coalition with Tories. This is like, I mean, we now know Murdo's joined the independence movement. He's bought a season ticket for Parkhead. But this is in the same, was it Clown World? I think we should make it our Clown World. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, but sadly it's not. I mean, Clown World is Alex Yanafouris, I can't remember the surname. Christopherus, but he's very good. He's somebody we use quite a lot for information, and his Clown Worlds are great. And this should be a Clown World, but the reality is it's not. We're not. Who's surprised by that now? The Labour Party that I voted for, growing up and I grew up with, would never have dreamed of doing anything like this. And here we are. We're getting the same neoliberal message in every issue we discuss here. And our party, my current party, the party that is leading Scotland, is playing along at every turn. I don't know how Nicola and the rest of them are going to have to cover this up. I don't know how they can fail to have this strategy exposed. They've got to change track and fight for independence, because if they don't, they'll be shown to be exactly what the Labour Party have become under Anas Sarwar and Sir Keir Starmer. These guys are not Labour people. They're not. Since when did billionaires run the Labour Party? And we should be remembering what the roots of the working class are, and the roots of Tressel's the ragged trousered philanthropist. And speaking of books, Yvonne, was it Poverty Safari you're reading just now, or has Dan written another one?
No, he's just brought out another one. I've read Poverty Safari. No, it's
fabulous.
It's another one with a long title.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. He's very insightful books. I found Poverty Safari excellent, and I would recommend him. We should promote Darren here and put his book up.
Well, actually, I had a pop at him yesterday. To be true, yeah. Well, he was talking about that old chestnut about we shouldn't be abandoning our friends on the left in England.
That's naive.
And I said, that's not acceptable.
He's a principled guy.
They've abandoned us. Yeah. They don't talk up for us. Why should we? Time they stood on their own 2 feet. It's up to them to look after themselves. So
it's called the social distance between us.
Well, there we go. Well, it's worth checking out, because we all the truth speakers and the people that know what they're talking about. And Darren has done his homework on drugs and the problem in Scotland, if he's exposing that, fantastic. And I'm sure he probably leans towards, and I will certainly read it, he probably leans to the Swiss or Portuguese solution for drugs. It's the right way to go ahead. Sorry, I came across it in the police and some of the other stuff I did with Chris's House, the suicide charity, and it really needs to be addressed. It's horrific, absolutely horrific. And if he's shining a light on it and we can help in any small way, we should. But no, back to the reality here. And there's a theme running through what Yvonne has said, Denise has said, and we've all been looking at. The campaign that the SNP are going to run, the hard answers to hard questions, not GRA and the light touch stuff, have to be addressed. The whole strategy has shown that Section 30 strategy was a nonsense policy. I mean, India and Yes will mobilise 100%, Salvo, SSRG, Alba, all of these people will mobilise. The big question, will SNP work alongside or continue to plough their own furrow and just promote themselves? The whole both votes SNP philosophy has got to go for the good of the people of this country. We're serious about making this an independent country that's inclusive. If SNP are real, are true about their alleged inclusivity, then start including people. Start including your own people, for God's sake, and stop promoting people that have got their own interests at heart, and start being transparent. And the split, some of the stuff that we've heard, that ridiculous to think that. I've got to say, it's as if the egotism and the barefaced lies are now moved right into SNP, and we're falling into the same problem, having watched Perfidious Albion perform. We are now practicing the same modus operandi as Perfidious Albion. The European Union's doing it, the Americans are doing it, and we, as a people, are better than that. If we really are inclusive and we want to include everybody who lives and works in Scotland, and I still say it's the wrong franchise and we shouldn't allow anyone who's passing through the vote on the constitutional future of our country. But if we're true about our inclusiveness, which I'm certain we all are, then they need to start to man up and woman up and start actually recognising the rest of the people who believe in what believe, and start working with us and not against us. For God's sake, this is it. This is now. We need to do it, and we need to stick together, and it has to come from SNP. So come on, show us some leadership, Nicola. Let's do it.
Well done. Well, time's beaten us, but one last question. I don't know if you noticed, and this is for yourselves, Denise and Yvonne. The TUC LGBT group have unanimously voted through a motion to remove charitable status from the LGB Alliance. Now, I find it quite incredible that one LGBT is attacking the LGB Alliance. It's going back to this whole clown world we're talking about. It's maybe not a shock, Denise, but it's quite wrong.
Yeah, it's quite wrong. And the LGB Alliance were given charitable status, and they advocate for same-sex attracted people, and that is their concern. And same-sex attracted is a protected characteristic under the Equality Act. So the idea, gender reassignment is a different protected characteristic, and we recently had a ruling for Women's Scotland case that said that the protected characteristics shouldn't interfere with each other. So you're perfectly entitled to advocate for same-sex attracted people and not for anybody else. So that's what this group are doing, and they've come in for the most horrendous, abuse, just because they want to talk for same-sex attracted people. And it's nothing less than homophobia, and the lesophobia, they actually get it worse than lesbians. They have a terrible time. A lot of lesbians aren't even going to Pride because they don't feel welcome there anymore. They are attracted to people on the basis of sex. And that's what that organisation is for. It's for people who are attracted to, are same-sex attracted. And they're going to set up a helpline for same-sex attracted children, which is fantastic, because a lot of same-sex attracted boys and girls think they are trans, but actually they're gay. And allowing them to explore that is really important. And that's what this service will allow. It will allow gay children, lesbians and homosexuals, gays, to get help. And this is what this STUC is against. These people are absolutely completely captured by gender ideology. They're no longer saying, did you see what was on Wings Over Scotland? What they're calling people, that biological sex is a construct of doctors, white people, or white people depression. And you know, it's just, and the Scottish government has money for this training for their civil servants. It's completely nuts. And this is the kind of rubbish they're taught in schools. It's madness, absolute madness. And these people are not entirely sane. And they've captured all these institutions. And you're just looking at them. The thing I've really noticed, though, I think the sensible people are starting to go, hold on, this is nuts. I love the LGBT Alliance. I was actually at their launch in Glasgow when they actually launched, and they're a fantastic group. And they actually started Gay Pride. I mean, their pedigree and their devotion to the cause of gay rights, it's unquestionable. And they worked. They were the ones that pressurized and got acceptance for gay marriage. Was one of their big things, and they did that. So they are absolute expert advocates. Their hearts are totally in the right place. Absolutely lovely people that, gay children now will have as a support, their helpline, and it's all great. And as for that, they should be looking after their members, advocating for the wages and conditions, not pursuing nutcase ideology.
Correct. Just as because time really is going against Yvonne. Last thing, the one thing that Denise missed out was it's also very misogynistic. What's going on? And it's all about men, as usual, controlling women.
Yes, well, I would urge everybody just to look into the history of the LGB Alliance, because it was started by a group of activists and former Stonewall supporters in 2019. And these the Stonewall was a very brilliant, heroic organization, which put gay rights front center everywhere, and we are where we are today because of the heroics of the people in Stonewall. The fact that they have transferred now to the LGB Alliance speaks volumes. And I think that I would say within the next 12 years, it will turn full circle, and the LGB Alliance will emerge as a credible, worthy organisation, which is helping far many more troubled, confused teenagers than some of these misogynistic groups that call the likes of Denise and I witches and TERFs and whatever else they call us.
You want to hear what they call me? Anyway.
There's a lot of names for you, I've heard. Roddy.
Oh, I know that. And I love them all.
Back to the watershed again.
Yeah, if I'm upset, I'm obviously doing something right. We've come to the end, folks. I've got to thank you very much and for your contributions throughout this parliamentary session. And as I say to you, viewers, if anything happens, we will be back, but we're going to take a wee summer break. I've got to work in my tan, and my grandchildren are coming in, so they take preference. But needless to say, after this, we're finished and we go off the screen. Roger Anderson, our resident historian, has got some more wonderful history stuff here. And I've got to make an apology. I'm not quite sure. He's done a whole series of little shows. So there's a nice wee bit of history for you at the end. But I want you all to have a nice summer, a nice holiday, and I hope you come back as refreshed as us. But the most important thing is, till we see you again, please, please, please take care.
Good evening. Well, it is evening here. I'm still on Skye. Different weather to last time. Very nice weather here. And I'm just up above, on a hill, up above where I was in the last video at St Columba's Isle. And just behind me, there's a Pictish stone on Skye. One of only two, I think, that they've found here. But nonetheless, it's a sign of Pictish culture, of the same culture that we've looked at out to the east, and we've seen some quite spectacular stones. We'll see some quite spectacular stones. Actually, we've only seen one so far, but I'll be doing more. Here, culture's mixed. The Norse came in, and the Gaels, and these stones disappear earlier. I'll just give you a look at it. I'll turn this round and let you have a good look. Let you have a good look at the view as well. It's really quite stunning, looking over to the Coolins. So I'll show you where it's sort of context, where it is, and then turn to the stone. So give me a second, I'll turn this round. There we are. See the Coolins in the distance there. Bird song. Let's turn to the stone. So this is the Clachard stone. As I say, quite close to St Columba's Isle, and hopefully in this sunlight you can see the carvings. Now this is not as I said, as complex as the previous stone that I looked at, but nonetheless it dates to the 7th or 8th century. Now let me think back. The Shamwick stone, Clach Carid, is some 1,300 years old, so that makes it slightly newer, if that's the right word, slightly more recent than the previous one, than this one. So what can we see on this? We can see a number of symbols, slightly weathered. They're quite difficult to make out. But there is, as they term them, a crescent and V-rod, a double disc and Z-rod, and a mirror and comb on the stone. I won't go into our lack of understanding of the meanings of these, but these are quite common Pictish symbols. You see them on the other stone, the other stones in the east. So we're immediately seeing a commonality of culture. But this is slightly earlier. There are earlier stones too over in the east. Get these complex stones dating slightly later. And clearly in the east there's a sophisticated development which is influenced both by Celtic iconography, if you like, and also Northumbrian as well. So there are sort of twin influences over there. But as I said, the culture changes here. what happens to it? Well, the Norse come in. The old view of the Norse was they came in, swords in hand, and wiped out the peoples. There's a tractor coming, so if you can hear a noise in the background, that'll be what you can hear. It's going to come by here, and it will make a bit more noise. So apologies for that. I might stop the video for a second. So the Vikings come in here, and I'll just stop this for a second, and then we'll carry on, because this is going to be noisy. And there we are, it's fading in the background. It was quite noisy. So I said the Vikings, the Norse really, I mean this is what we should call them, somewhat controversial term. They come in, the Gaels come in, or at least Gaelic influence comes in. It's very, very, it's a real matter of debate as to whether people come in and wipe other people's out. That was the old view. I think I've mentioned that before. The view now amongst those who study these things appears to be that there's processes of assimilation. Yeah, there are fights between different cultures, and we're talking cultures here. We're not talking ethnicities as such. Even the Vikings, which we've always considered to be something like an ethnicity, they've now found the DNA of people amongst Norse burials from a great many ethnicities, if you like, including DNA of people from who they assume were probably black. So our view of the Norse is possibly going to change as there's more of this examined. And why wouldn't the Picts and the Gaels be the same? Amongst academics, it appears to be the case. It appears to be the new consensus appears to be that the two cultures, they're both Celtic cultures. One becomes dominant, possibly through trade, and in this part of the world, this is essentially what happens. And in the later clan period, the Gaelic period, we've got a combination of Gaelic culture and Norse culture, but the Pictish culture has disappeared. It seems to have a habit of doing this. So do an entire people disappear, or do they just get assimilated? Similar languages. The Gaels appear to have been more, I guess, more dominant in trade, and it becomes a language of trade. It becomes a language of commerce, and people's culture is affected by that. I suppose in the modern world, you have a more dominant culture that affects other cultures, like, say, our culture, or even like British culture. Goodness gracious me, using that word, if there is such a thing. Britain increasingly post-war was influenced by the USA, very powerful, the new empire, you might say. And our culture is very Americanized in comparison to what it once was. Possibly we see processes like that. I mean, that's a very crude sort of comparison, but something along those lines, where cultures get assimilated into other cultures, and the whole Pictish culture essentially disappears earlier here and essentially becomes subsumed. In the East it continues, and as I said, it eventually becomes a component part of the Kingdom of Alpa when it develops, when it comes into being. But that Eastern Pictish culture, which by that point of course has become Christianized, that disappears as well. And the main language of Scotland becomes, at that point, it becomes Gaelic, what we know as Gaelic. So, very interesting topic, in my opinion, possibly just in my opinion, but it's worth exploring, I think. But here we are, Isle of Skye, a place that we associate with Gaelic culture, but here we have the Pictish, which links this place to most of the rest of Scotland, certainly in the north, running right down to, goodness gracious me, the River Forth. Below there, at the time, back in these relatively in this relatively unknown period, south of that area, we've got the influence of Northumbrians, but they're eventually defeated by the Picts, and that starts to change as we move towards what we understand as Scotland nowadays. But they disappear earlier in this part, or the culture disappears earlier in this part of Scotland, but it's here. So that was the Clach stone on the Isle of Skye. If you Google it, you'll be able to find out more. You'll find some quite clear drawings of these symbols that I've been showing you, and that's our little Pictish interlude on Skye. Thanks very much for listening. Cheers. Take care.